The mercury desert of Vilex 4 consumed all sound. It did not merely dampen it, it devoured it, pulling every vibration into its heavy, metallic sands before it could reach an eardrum. The silence was a physical weight, a pressure that made a man feel like he was wading through deep water. Bren Keats felt that pressure in his bones, along with the ache of exhaustion and the murderous, scraping thirst that had been his only companion for 2 days. He was a man built of recycled parts, a former special operative whose name had been deliberately erased from rosters, now reduced to hauling freight for third-rate mining guilds. A ghost, just the way he liked it. He hauled a grav sled loaded with cracked synthesizer cores, his boots sinking into the shimmering, silver-gray dunes. The twin suns of Ilex beat down, a dull copper and a sickly violet, making the world look like a fresh bruise. Bren's throat felt like it was full of powdered glass. His canteen had been empty for 9 hours. His paycheck, assuming he ever reached the outpost, would barely cover the water bill. A sudden, sharp pain lanced up his spine, almost making him buckle. He gritted his teeth, grabbing the small of his back. He blamed it on an old injury, a piece of shrapnel from a war he wasn't supposed to remember. He'd carried it for years, a dull throb that sometimes flared into white-hot agony. He didn't know it was a lie. He didn't know the thing sleeping against his vertebrae was called an oath core, a piece of technology so old and so secret. Even he didn't know he possessed it. He stumbled, his boot catching on something buried just beneath the surface. He fell to his knees, the impact jarring but silent. He cursed. But the desert ate the word. Annoyed, he looked back. It was not a rock. It was a horn, a single, elegant spiral of metal, half buried in the mercury sand. It was ancient, gleaming with a patina that spoke of centuries. He ran his gloved fingers over it, tracing intricate carvings. They felt familiar, like a word on the tip of his tongue. Aurelian script. He'd seen it in intelligence briefings, long ago. The mark of the old empire, curiosity, or perhaps just delirium, made him pull. It was heavy, but it came free. It was a drinking horn, open at the wide end, tapering to a sealed point. And it was not empty. He shook it. Something viscous sloshed inside. He peered into the gloom of the horn's mouth. At the bottom, a small amount of liquid gold shimmered. It caught the violet sunlight and threw it back, pulsing with a slow, internal light. His thirst was a screaming animal in his skull. This was insane. This was alien. This was probably a biohazard. He knew all the regulations. Never interact with uncatalogued xeno artifacts. He sniffed it. It smelled like ozone and warm metal. He thought about the 9 hours behind him, and the estimated 12 ahead. He thought about his cracked lips and swollen tongue. "Ah, hell," he rasped, the sound barely a whisper against his own ears. Bren Keats lifted the horn to his lips and drank. It was not liquid. It was not water. It was like swallowing sunlight, a cold, electric shock that tasted of honey and copper. It was only a mouthful, but it hit his system like a lightning strike. He gasped, dropping the horn. A wave of intense, revitalizing energy surged through him. The first thing he noticed was the thirst. It was gone. Not just quenched, but obliterated. The second thing he noticed was the scar. He had a long, puckered white line running down his left forearm, a souvenir from a plasma burn on Scara Prime. He'd had it for a decade. He watched, stunned, as the old, dead tissue flushed with color. The scar tingled, itched, and then, over the span of 30 seconds, it simply vanished. The skin was smooth, unblemished, as if the burn had never happened. He scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. He felt new. The exhaustion was gone. Even the deep-seated ache in his knee from a parachute jump gone wrong had disappeared. Then he felt it. A new pulse. A low, warm, rhythmic beat in the center of his chest, just beneath his sternum. It was not his heart, but it was beating in perfect time with it. A soft, golden thrum. The crown seed, a biological remnant of an empress he had never met, was synchronizing. He was still staring at his unmarked arm when the silence of the desert shifted. It was no longer empty. It was occupied. He looked up. Standing on the crest of the dune, not 20 yards away, was a woman. She was flanked by 2 guards that were not men. They were biological constructs, 7 feet tall, made of interlocking plates of pale chitin and bone. They held weapons that looked like extensions of their own arms. The woman herself was a paradox. She was draped in royal fabrics of deep indigo, though they were frayed and stained with the desert's silver dust. Her posture was frail. Her hands, clasped before her, were skeletal, the skin thin as old paper. She looked ancient, a creature of dust and bone. But her eyes were young. They were a piercing, impossible gold, the exact same color as the liquid he had just consumed. They burned with a ferocious, undiluted life. The Empress Murmured, ancient in bone but youthful in gaze, took one fragile step down the dune. Her bio-sentinels mirrored her, their movements unnervingly fluid. She stopped. Her voice, when it came, was not eaten by the desert. It was a dry, telepathic whisper that brushed directly against his mind, sounding like rustling leaves and cracked parchment. "Return my youth to me, little ghost," she murmured, "or stay with me." Bren Keats blinked. His mind, sharpened by the seed in his old training, raced through a dozen scenarios. All of them were bad. He opted for the one thing he was still good at stalling. He slowly raised his hands, palms out. "Well, that's quite the opening line," he said, his voice sounding shockingly loud to his own ears, though he knew the sound barely traveled a foot. He hoped the telepathy was a two-way street. Most girls just ask for my comm code. And, for the record, ghost is a bit harsh. I prefer existentially challenged. The golden eyes narrowed. The mental whisper became a hiss. "You drank. The crown seed. The Aurelian bond is forged." "Aurelian bond sounds expensive," Bren retorted, trying to keep his tone light, even as he felt the thrum in his chest pulse in agitation. "Look, lady." I was thirsty. There were no warning labels on the horn. You might want to look into that. Hazard assessment, and all. The Empress's face contorted, a mask of grief and rage. "It is not a beverage, you ignorant ape. It is my lineage, my time, the last of what my ancestors distilled. You have stolen what remains of Morel. Now, by the laws of the bond, you are either my vessel, or you are my sacrifice." Bren's smirk faded. "Vessel sacrifice. I'm not crazy about either option. Can I pick a none of the above?" Before Morel could answer, a new sound violated the world. It was not a whisper. It was a high, thin, electronic whine. It was the sound of 1,000 tiny engines, and it came from everywhere. Bren and Morel both looked up. The bruised sky was now filled with a shimmering, shifting cloud of silver specks. They swarmed like insects. Tiny, autonomous drones, each no bigger than his thumb. They blocked out the copper sun, casting a web of moving shadows over the sand. A voice spoke. It was not a mental whisper, but a broadcast, emanating from the cloud itself. It was a chorus of voices, male and female, synthesized into a single, cold, harmonious tone. The Palladium Chorus. Biological asset designated crown seed detected. The chorus sang. Location confirmed. Aurelian anomaly designated Morel detected. Human contaminant designated Brenkeats detected. Stand down for sanitation and retrieval. Non-compliance will be archived. Sanitation, Bren muttered, dropping into a defensive crouch. I just took a bath. Relatively speaking. Morel looked at the swarming cloud, and for the first time, her youthful eyes filled with something other than rage. It was terror. Eidolon, she breathed, her real voice a papery rasp. The consortium, they hunt me. Now? She turned those terrified, golden eyes on him. They hunt you? Fantastic, Bren said. My social calendar is just exploding today. The cloud of drones descended. They didn't fire individual shots. They swarmed, coalescing into larger shapes, their tiny engines whining in a maddening harmony. One of the biosentinels stepped forward, raising its organic weapon. A dense cluster of drones dove at it. They didn't shoot it. They landed on it. And the 7-foot creature of bone and chitin simply dissolved, collapsing into a pile of gray sludge. The other sentinel moved to shield Morel, but it was too slow. A different swarm, a tight fist of drones, shot past it, heading directly for the Empress. Bren didn't think. He didn't plan. He just moved. The dull throb in his spine. The thing he called shrapnel suddenly erupted. It wasn't pain. It was a surge of pure, refined power. The Oath Core woke up. Time seemed to slow down. The golden thrum in his chest hammered a new, frantic rhythm. He saw the drone fist closing in on Morel. He saw her frail body, too slow to react, in 2 bounds. He covered the 20 yards between them. It felt less like running and more like flying. He grabbed the Empress by her thin arm, yanking her back with a force that should have torn the limb from its socket. He spun them both around, using his own body as a shield, skidding to a halt behind the partial cover of the grav sled. He landed hard on one knee, the impact barely registering. He was breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the sheer adrenaline and the alien energy coursing through him. Morel stared at him, her mouth open in a silent "oh." Her terror was momentarily replaced by stunned disbelief. You moved, she whispered in his mind. Yeah. Well, Bren panted, peeking over the sled. The drones were reforming, their collective intelligence processing his unexpected speed. I'm full of surprises. And your youth juice. Now, are we going to have a theological debate about this bond? Or are we going to get archived? The drones finished their calculation. The entire cloud began to spin, faster and faster, forming a miniature vortex. A low, ominous hum built, and the air crackled with energy. They were charging a wide area pulse. They are preparing to sanitize the area, Morel whispered, her hand clutching his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Not on my watch, Bren growled. He scanned the landscape. No cover, no escape, except... He pointed to a thin, dark line on a nearby rock face, a fissure, barely wide enough for a man. There. He didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed the grav sled's tow bar with one hand and Morel's arm with the other. Run, he sprinted, dragging both the Empress and 1,000 pounds of junk metal with a strength he did not possess 3 minutes ago. The Oath Core burned hot against his spine, and the crown seed in his heart sang a song of impossible vitality. The whine of the drones reached a fever pitch. Now Bren roared. He shoved Morel toward the fissure and unclipped the grav sled, heaving it sideways. He and Morel tumbled into the narrow crack in the rock just as the pulse unleashed. There was no sound, only a flash of blinding white light and a wave of intense heat. The grav sled and the synthesizer cores it carried vaporized instantly, reduced to metallic steam. Inside the fissure, it was dark and cramped. The silence of the desert returned. But now it was a comfort, a blanket against the sterile, singing death outside. Bren leaned against the rock wall, his lungs heaving. The golden pulse in his chest began to slow, but it didn't stop. It was a part of him now, a warm, constant, alien presence. Morel slid down the opposite wall, a scant 2 feet away. In the near total darkness, her golden eyes were like 2 miniature suns. "They will not stop," she whispered, her voice shaking. A mix of old-age frailty and pure terror. Eidolon wants this seed. They want all time, bottled and sold. They will scour this planet for us. Bren stared at his own hands, visible only by the faint light from her eyes. The hands of a freight hauler, the hands of a killer. And now, the hands of a thief who had stolen time itself. "So that's what this is," he said, his voice flat, bottled longevity. "And I just chugged the whole bottle." "You are bound to me, human," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of its earlier authority. "The seed is synchronized with your heart. My life, what little remains, is now tied to yours. We cannot be far apart, or the bond will fray. We will both weaken. We will both die." Bren let out a short, harsh laugh that was swallowed by the stone. "So, about those 2 options you gave me. Return your youth. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, seems anatomically difficult right now. Or stay with you." He pushed himself off the wall, wincing as the oath core's fire subsided into a low, electric hum. He could hear the faint, high-pitched whine of the drones, sweeping back and forth outside their hiding place. They were searching. "I'm guessing staying involves a lot more running, and a distinct lack of sanitation," he said. Morel said nothing. She just watched him, her ancient face a mask of desperate, regal waiting. Bren sighed, the sound loud in the enclosed space. He was trapped. He could feel it. The biological hook was set deep in his chest. He wasn't just stuck with her. He was stuck with this new, terrifying power in his spine, and a stolen heartbeat that wasn't his. He was a ghost who had just been dragged back into the world of the living, and he already hated it. "All right," Bren Keats said, rubbing his face. "Fine. I'll stay." He met her glowing gaze in the dark. "But let's get one thing straight. I'm not staying for you. I'm not staying for your crown, or your empire, or whatever royal nonsense you believe in." He tapped his own chest, feeling the steady, golden thrum beneath his fingers. "I'm staying because this thing, this biological debt is ticking in my chest. And frankly, I really don't want to be archived today." They ran for 2 days. They moved through the badlands of Elex 4, and the planet itself seemed to test their fragile alliance. The Eidolon drones swept the silver skies, their search patterns cold and mathematical. Bren and Morel hid in the shadows of bismuth crystals and slept in caves no bigger than coffins. The bond was a living, breathing thing. It was a chain, invisible and unbreakable. When Bren's energy surged, the twin gifts of the Oath Core and the Crown Seed, Morel would straighten, her frail hands steadying. When her ancient body faltered, a wave of crippling, arthritic exhaustion would wash over Bren, making his legs feel like lead. "This is miserable," Bren grunted, pulling the Empress up a steep rock chimney. "It's like being tethered to a very fragile, very critical grandmother." "And you," Morel's voice hissed in his mind, her own breath too thin to carry in the air, "are like being chained to a bull." "All strength and no grace. Stop pulling. You will damage the bond. If I stop pulling, The drones will sanitize us. I prefer damaged to archived, he shot back. They left the Mercury Desert and entered the singing salt marshes. The ground was a crust of white crystals, over a meter of viscous, black mud. Every footstep made the crystals resonate, releasing a high, dissonant chord that sang across the flats. It was beautiful, and it was a death trap. They'll hear us coming for kilometers, Brent said, scanning the shimmering white expanse. The sound is the key, Morell whispered, pointing a skeletal finger. Walk with the harmony, not against it. She began to move, her frail body swaying in a strange, offbeat rhythm. Her steps, light as they were, created a new, lower tone that blended with the marsh's song. Bren watched, then followed, his own heavier steps falling into her cadence. It was a painful, counterintuitive shuffle, half waltz, half limp. But the sound of their passage was lost, absorbed into the landscape's mournful music. It took them 12 hours. By the end, Bren's muscles screamed from the unnatural movement, and he could feel Morell's life force guttering. They collapsed on the far side, in the shadow of the silicon forest. It was a place of petrified, glass-like trees that rose hundreds of feet, their sharp, crystalline branches refracting the twin suns into blinding, dangerous slivers of light. This way, Morell urged, leading him deeper into the glittering maze. There is an old waygate, a passage. It will take us to allies. Allies, Bren was skeptical. You look like you ran out of allies about 100 years ago. Insolence, she hissed, but her voice was weak. They found the gate. It was not a structure, but two towering, black glass trees that had grown into a perfect arch. The air between them shimmered, but the gate was closed. A faint, Aurelian rune glowed on one of the trunks. Morell placed her hand on it. Empress Murmured, command this gate to open. Nothing, she tried again, her voice stronger, laced with the mental command he had come to recognize. By the blood of the first dynasty, I command it. The rune remained dark. The air remained still. It does not know me, she whispered, and the despair in her voice was absolute. My biometrics are too thin. My life is too old. The seed. Without the seed's full resonance, I am no one. She slumped against the tree, a discarded pile of bones and royal cloth. Bren stared at the gate. They were trapped. The drones were sweeping the salt marsh behind them. He could hear their faint, harmonious whine approaching. He looked at the Empress, defeated by a locked door. He looked at the uncaring gate, and he thought about the sheer, mind-numbing absurdity of his situation. A sound bubbled up in his chest. It was not a sound of joy. It was a harsh, bitter, exhausted sound. Bren Keats laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of pure, cynical humor. We're going to be killed, he chuckled, by a stubborn tree. The second the sound left his lips, the rune on the gate flared. It pulsed with a brilliant, white light. The air in the archway tore open, revealing a swirling vortex of energy. Morell's head snapped up. She stared first at the gate, then at Bren, her golden eyes wide with an emotion he could not place. It was part horror, part disbelief. It responded. She stammered to what Bren said, still catching his breath. To that, she said, gesturing to him as if he were a piece of rotting fruit. That noise you made. My laugh. Bren's smirk returned, genuine this time. Guess it's a sucker for dark humor. It is not possible, she insisted, even as she pulled herself upright. Aurelian induction tech is keyed to harmonic resonance, to intention, to will. Yeah, well, my will is to not die, Bren said, grabbing her arm. Let's go. He pulled her through the vortex. They fell out onto a durasteel deck, the sudden gravity making Bren's knees ache. The air was cold, recycled, and smelled of ozone and cheap, synthesized coffee. They were in a dark hangar bay. A ramp was lowering on a ship docked in the bay, a freighter that looked like it had been assembled from 3 different warring designs. It was ugly, functional, and painted a matte black. The name Vagrant Scythe was stenciled on its hull in faded white letters. A woman stood on the ramp, leaning against the bulkhead. She wore a stained, high-G pilot suit, and a data visor was pushed up onto her shock of short, red hair. She held a heavy plasma cutter in one hand, not pointed at them, but ready. Her face was sharp, and her eyes, as they scanned them, were even sharper. "You look like hell, Your Majesty," the woman said, her voice a low, gravelly contralto. "And you've picked up a stray." "Tamsin," Morel said, pulling her robe straight, her dignity returning like a shield. "This is a complication. We are being hunted." "You're always being hunted, Tamsin," Ro replied, her eyes lingering on Bren. "Who's the meat? He smells like ozone and bad decisions." "The stray?" "Bren Keats," Bren offered, raising a hand. "And you're half right. The bad decisions part. Anyway. Statistically, Tamsin. All organics smell of bad decisions. It is their primary export." The new voice was synthesized, clean, and laced with an almost undetectable level of dry amusement. A figure stepped out of the shadow of the cockpit. It was an android. His chassis, a mix of polished chrome and reinforced ceramic plates, all built around a humanoid frame. His movements were too fluid to be merely mechanical, and his optical sensors glowed with a calm, judgmental blue. "Greetings, Empress," the android said, bowing slightly. "You are 2.3 hours behind schedule. And you have acquired a dual signature biological? How cluttered." "Rook 9, Morel acknowledged. "The Eidolon Consortium is in pursuit. We must leave, now." "Concurred," Rook 9 said. "The consortium is thorough. And this stray, as Tamsin so elegantly put it, is broadcasting a very unusual signal, both human and something else. It is very loud." "That's me," Bren said. "The life of the party." "Strap in. Meat," Tamsin said, jerking her chin toward the ship. "If you puke in my cockpit, I'll space you." The Vagrant Scythe blasted out of the hidden hangar, its old engines screaming in protest. Bren was thrown into a web chair as Tamsin pulled a high-G maneuver that plastered him to the seat. "Are all your friends this charming?" Bren grunted, his face contorting. "They are alive," Morel said from the co-pilot seat, her own body seemingly immune to the G-force. "That is charm enough." They were in orbit, a black void pricked with stars, before Tamsin spoke again. "All right, Jax, we're clear. What's the feed? Why is the entire sector suddenly interested in this backwater?" A new voice crackled over the comms, young, energetic, and layered with static. "Tamsin Rook. Thank the code. You're alive. You will not believe what just hit the public feeds. The entire Eidolon network just lit up like a festival. We're here." "Jax," Tamsin said, her knuckles white on the controls. "Spit it out." The voice belonged to Jax Calder, and he sounded grim. "They just posted a containment and retrieval order, sector-wide, for, get this, a human vessel, uncatalogued symbiote. Bounty is God's. It's 9 figures, enough to buy a small moon." There was a heavy silence in the cockpit. Tamsin's eyes flicked to the mirror above her console, locking onto Bren. "That would be me," Bren said, trying to sound casual. "The uncatalogued symbiote. It's a pleasure to be in such high demand. They've also deployed the gene hunters, Jax added, his voice dropping. Eidolon's private collection. The Red List specialists. They're not just sending drones anymore. Tamsin. They're sending monsters. Tamsin killed the comms. The cockpit was silent, save for the hum of the engines. She swiveled her chair around to face Bren. All right, meet, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Start talking. What did you do? Bren looked at Morel. The Empress looked away, her gaze fixed on the stars. He was in a small, cramped galley. The scythe was running on silent, tucked into an asteroid's shadow, while Tamsin argued with Jax over secure channels. Rook 9 was optimizing engine harmonics to avoid detection. Bren cornered Morel. He slapped a steaming bulb of nutrient paste on the table in front of her. She recoiled. I'm done running blind, Bren said, his voice low. You're dying. I've got a price on my head. I've got something thrumming in my chest that isn't mine. And I just found out monsters are hunting me. I need answers. All of them. What exactly did I drink? Morel looked at the nutrient paste with disdain, then at him. Her golden eyes were fading, the light in them now a dull, coppery color. It is not a what, she whispered, her voice frail. It is a who. It is my great-grandmother, who fought the Silicon Scourge. It is my father, who mapped the uncharted veils. It is the memory of my own coronation, when my bones were still strong and my eyes were clear. She held up her shaking, skeletal hand. The skin was like parchment, the blue veins standing out in stark relief. The crown seed is the Aurelian dynasty. Mr. Keats. It is our history, our lineage, our very essence, liquefied and preserved. A living archive of memory and vitality. It is what held my family and my body against the ravages of time. She met his gaze, and he saw the abyss in her eyes. This, she gestured to her frail form, is what I am without it. An empty library. My body was already ancient, held in careful stasis by the seed. Now the stasis is broken. The connection is severed. She looked down at her hands. I am dying, Mr. Keats, as fast as a candle in a stellar wind. And you are the wind that snuffed me out. Bren leaned back, the words hitting him harder than a physical blow. He wasn't just a thief. He was a walking obituary. He was carrying a civilization's memory in his veins. So, Eidolon, he said, his voice rough. Why do they want it so badly? Why does anyone want more? Myrell said, bitterness creeping in. Eidolon does not sell technology. It sells time. It sells longevity to the rich. Bottled age for those who can afford it. The crown seed is the original source, the purest, most potent form of distilled life. They have hunted my family for it for generations. I am just the last one. The weight in Bren's chest, the golden thrum, felt heavier. It was not just a debt. It was a responsibility. Tamsin found a temporary safe haven, a place Eidolon would not think to look, or perhaps would not dare to profane. The Moon Cove Observatory. It was an ancient Aurelian structure carved from a single, moon-white asteroid. It was open to space, shielded by a flickering containment field that held in a breathable atmosphere. The entire structure was built around a massive gravity lens that focused the light of a distant nebula, painting the white stone floors in shifting colors of violet and emerald. A small enclave of Aurelians was gathered there, perhaps the last of their kind in this sector. They were robed in white, their forms just as frail as Morel's, their faces hidden by veils of woven light. Tamsin, Bren, and Morel watched from a shadowed alcove. The Aurelians were conducting a ceremony, a funeral. They were chanting, their voices a low, beautiful harmony. They released a small, ceramic urn into the central beam of light, and the dust of the departed soul was carried away, becoming one with the nebular light. It was the most beautiful, tragic thing Bren had ever seen. A civilization, dying with unparalleled grace. Morel watched, a single, crystalline tear tracing a path down her ancient cheek. Bren felt the crown seed in his chest resonate with the ceremony. It pulsed with a profound, shared grief. He was no longer just a thief. He was a participant. He was carrying a piece of this beautiful, sorrowful, dying race. He looked at his hands, the hands that had taken the horn, the hands that had stolen this. A new, unfamiliar feeling crystallized in his gut. It was not just guilt. It was purpose. I have to live worthy of this, he thought, the vow silent but absolute. I have to be better than a thief. The sight of a young Aurelian child in the crowd, watching the ceremony with the same ancient, tired eyes as the adults, triggered something. A memory, dark and buried, clawed its way to the surface. It hit Bren like a physical blow. His last mission for Spec Ops, a neutralize order on an Eidolon research station in the Outer Territories. He'd breached the core, his team covering the perimeter. He expected weapons labs. He expected drug synthesis. He found a longevity ward. It was not a hospital. It was a creche, children, dozens of them, from a dozen different species, floating in nutrient tanks. They were not sick. They were pristine. And they were all asleep, held in a chemically induced coma. Tiny. Sterile catheters were linked to their spines, to their organs, siphoning traces of cellular plasma, the raw, unfiltered essence of youth. They were not being educated. They were being milked. Eidolon was not just extending life for the rich. They were harvesting it from the poor, from the lost, from the children no one would miss. He had planted his charges and burned the facility to a cinder. He'd reported no survivors, primary target destroyed. He had resigned his commission the next day. He looked at Morel, her body a testament to time's victory. He felt the golden pulse in his own veins. It was the same currency, stolen age, stolen youth. It all came from the same monstrous economy. He turned, his face a mask of cold fury, and strode back to the scythe. "We're not running," Bren said, his voice echoing in the small cockpit. Tamsin didn't look up from her console. "We are. The gene hunters aren't a metaphor. Meat. They're real, and they don't stop." "They have a supply chain," Bren said, the oath core in his back humming in agreement with his rage. "They don't just have this stuff. They process it. They bottle it. They sell it." Morel, who had followed him, looked up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we stop being prey and we start being a problem," Bren said. He jabbed a finger at the comm panel. "Jax, you still there?" A burst of static. "I'm here." "What's up? Find me the distillery. Find me where they process this. This stolen time. Find me the head of the snake." There was a long pause. When Jax's voice returned, the youthful energy was gone, replaced by a buzzing, newfound respect. "I know the place. It's the hub. A high-orbit refinery station called Helio Black. It is. Not a soft target. Bren. It's a fortress." "Good," Bren said, a wolfish grin touching his lips for the first time. "Soft targets are boring. To hit Helio Black," Tamsin said, finally looking interested. "We need a ship that can get us close. Something with Eidolon credentials. The Scythe will be flagged 3 sectors away." Jax Bren asked. "Already on it," the hacker's voice replied. "There's a private Eidolon courier, the Etia, docked at a low-security orbital station 2 parsers from here. It's on a 20-hour layover. Clean credentials, high speed, and low profile. Let's go shopping, Bren said. The orbital station was a hub of commerce, mostly automated. The Ada was exactly as Jax described, sleek, gray, and looking deceptively harmless. It was secured in a private dock, sealed by a heavy-duty bulkhead and a glowing, red-lit security panel. Rook 9 glided up to the panel, his fingers extending into a set of delicate interface probes. He plugged in. His blue optic pulsed. The encryption is formidable, the android announced. It is based on fluctuating prime number iteration, keyed to a quantum randomizer. It will take me approximately 400 standard years to crack, or I can try to bypass it, which has a 98.7% chance of alerting the entire station. We do not have 400 years, Morel said, stepping forward. She placed her frail hand on the panel. She spoke in a high, formal Aurelian tone, a string of commands that sounded like breaking glass. The panel flashed a brighter, angrier red. A synthesized voice announced, "Access denied. Biometric mismatch. Aurelian archive not found." "It does not recognize me," Morel whispered, her voice cracking. It was the ultimate insult. She was no longer even an echo of herself. Tamsin sighed, raising her plasma cutter. "Guess we do it the loud way." "Wait," Bren said. He pushed past them, looking at the panel's small, glowing camera eye. "Let me try. Try what Tamsin said," singing to it. Sort of. Bren leaned close to the camera. "Hey." The red light stared at him. "So," Bren continued, "casual, you're a lock, big job, very important. But let me ask you something. You're protecting an empty ship, right? But a ship's value is in moving. Your purpose is to stay still. Don't you see the logical contradiction? You are a security device, succeeding so well at your job that you are preventing the asset from being an asset." The red light flickered. "What is he doing?" Tamsin whispered. "I am not certain," Rook 9 murmured, his optic brightening. "But I believe he is, annoying it." Bren leaned in, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. "You're not a lock. You're not a guardian. You're just a very expensive, very lonely brick. You're guarding nothing, and you're doing it perfectly. Congratulations on your profound, existential failure. Must be a real crisis of purpose." There was a sharp click. The panel flashed a bright, solid green. "Access granted," the synthesized voice said, sounding suddenly tired. "Please proceed before I reevaluate my core directives." The heavy bulkhead hissed and retracted. Bren patted the panel. "Who's a good lock?" Tamsin stared, her jaw open. Rook 9 cocked his head, his blue optic processing. "Fascinating. The algorithm is terrified of an existential crisis. A uniquely organic weapon. I am impressed." "Come on," Bren said, walking onto the courier's ramp. "We have a distillery to burn." Helio Black Station was a monument to clinical malice. It was not a fortress of spikes and guns. It was a sterile, corporate disk of polished white and chrome, hanging in the void like a surgeon's tray. It spun slowly, its purpose hidden behind a facade of quiet, automated industry. The stolen courier, the Etia, approached on a perfect, pre-programmed vector. Tamsin was at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls. Jax Calder was a ghost in their comms, a whisper of code from a safe distance, spoofing their credentials. "Docking clamp secured," Tamsin said, her voice tight. "You're on the clock. Meet." "Jax says you have 20 minutes until the system does its next automated handshake. If you're not back, we leave without you." "So comforting," Bren said, checking the seals on his pressure suit. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He was the weapon. "Rook 9, you're with me," Bren commanded. "Morel, you're on the bridge. You're our eyes. I am not a soldier." Morel's voice whispered over the private channel. She was in the Ada's crew quarters, her frail body strapped into a chair, her eyes closed. The physical proximity, the bond, was all she needed. "You're not," Bren agreed, stepping onto the station's dark, automated docking ring. The air hissed as it equalized. "You're the conductor. I'm just the instrument. Just be ready." A crude, and likely out of tune, instrument, Rook 9 observed, his metal feet clicking silently beside Bren. The internal schematics are complex. The central data core is 3 levels down, past the primary refining vats. The doors to the station slid open. The interior was pristine, white, and brightly lit. It was also utterly silent, run entirely by robotic arms and automated skimmers. "Let's go," Bren said. They moved fast. Rook 9 bypassed the first security door, with a pulse of coded light. The second door was heavier, a blast shield. "This one is biometrically sealed," Rook 9 said. "It requires a director-level life signature." "No problem," Bren said. He placed his hand on the scanner. "Invalid biometrics. Please stand by for sanitation team." "Bren." Morel's voice echoed in his head, sharp and sudden. "Do not move. Feel the seed. Feel me." Bren closed his eyes. He felt the golden thrum in his chest. But now, it was not his. It was a string, and someone was plucking it. He felt a cold, imperious will flow from his mind, down his arm, and into his hand. He felt the golden pulse surge, overlaying his own human heartbeat. For a second, his biometrics were not his own. They were older, colder, and infinitely more arrogant. Recalibrating. "Welcome, Director Halvern. The refinery is at 92% efficiency." The heavy door slid open. Bren stumbled, leaning against the frame. What was that I borrowed you?" Morel whispered, her voice sounding strained. "I projected the signature of the last Eidolon director I ever met. He was an unpleasant man. It seems the seed remembers everything." Rook 9 stared at Bren, his blue optic clicking. "Your biological readings are chaotic. Please refrain from doing that again. It is difficult to document." They moved deeper. The refining vats were not vats at all. They were a series of massive, crystalline tubes, 20 feet high, filled with a faintly glowing, amber liquid. Inside, suspended in the fluid, were hundreds of biological extracts, not bodies, but shimmering, translucent sheets of pure cellular potential, stolen life, waiting to be bottled. "This is it," Bren said, his voice a low growl. "The factory. Intruder alert. Level 3. Organic contaminants detected." The station was not undefended. From panels in the ceiling, a dozen security drones dropped. These were not the tiny swarmers from the desert. These were sleek, armed, and fast. "Rook, the door, I'll buy you time," Bren shouted. "My calculations suggest you have a 4% chance of buying anything other than your own demise," the android replied, already interfacing with the data core's terminal. "Watch me," Bren snarled. The first drone fired. It was a blue beam of concussive energy. Bren moved, but it wasn't just him. The Oath core flared, giving him the speed. The Crown Seed flared, giving him the vitality. And Morel steered. Dodge left her voice, screamed in his mind. A full second before the drone even twitched. Bren was already moving, the blue beam searing the air where he had been. "Now, Bren, the arm. Rip it off." He didn't question it. He grabbed the drone as it passed, his grip enhanced by the seed's power. He tore the plasma arm from its socket, the shriek of metal echoing in the sterile chamber. "Use it, the sealing conduit." He swung the sparking, severed weapon and fired. A blast of blue energy hit a power line, and the entire bay's lighting grid exploded in a shower of sparks. Another drone came at him, this one with spinning kinetic blades. Bren felt a wave of icy cold focus from Morel. He didn't see a drone. He saw a sequence. He saw the exact vector of its attack. The Crown Seed was not just memory. It was Aurelian battle calculus. He didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, grabbing the drone's chassis, and used its own momentum to slam it into the wall. He was a whirlwind. He was a perfect, symbiotic killing machine. He was a human with the instincts of a soldier, the power of a lost technology, and the mind of a dying empress guiding his every move. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. In 30 seconds it was over. The drones were a pile of smoking, severed parts. Bren was breathing hard, his knuckles bleeding, but he was unharmed. The golden pulse in his chest was singing. Calculations. "Revised," Rook 9 said, not looking up from his terminal. "Data core breach successful. Downloading." "What did you find?" Rook Bren panted, wiping sweat from his face. "A great deal of encrypted shipping manifests," the android said. "And a map. It seems Helio Black is merely a regional office. The central headquarters, the place where the raw material is refined into the master source, is a place called the Citadel Antimeridian. It is listed here as the Well of Years." "That's it," Bren said. "That's the heart of the snake. Download complete," Rook 9 said, pulling his probes free. "I have also taken the liberty of initiating the refinery's sterilization protocol, set to maximum. We have approximately 3 minutes. You did what a cleansing," Morel's voice whispered. A cold satisfaction in it. "Burn it. Burn it all. I love this team," Bren grinned. "Let's go." They sprinted back to the Acha, the station's alarms finally blaring, a sound of synthesized rising panic. They dove through the airlock just as Tamsin hit the thrusters, the ship tearing away from the docking clamp. They were 1,000 kilometers out when Helio Black Station exploded. It did not just blow apart, it imploded, then burst, a silent, secondary sun of white-hot plasma. The stolen lives in those vats were, at last, free. Back on the scythe, the Isha having been ditched, the mood was grim. The victory at Helio Black was short-lived. They had the target, the Citadel, but they had a bigger problem. Bren found Morel in the cargo bay, staring at the map of the Citadel projected on a data slate. Her body was racked with tremors. The exertion of the raid, of conducting him, had cost her dearly. "You were good back there," Bren said, his voice quiet. "We were good." She did not look up. It was necessary, but it was a fraction, a taste. The seed is still in you, human, and I am still dying. We have a target, Morel, he said, the Citadel. We hit them where they live. "You have a target," she corrected, her voice paper-thin. "I have a cure, and it is inside you." Bren's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "The bond," she said, her golden eyes, now faded to a dull, milky yellow. "Finally met his. It is a two-way street. A siphon. I can, with the right ritual, pull the seed back." "Pull it back." Bren felt the thrum in his chest. A part of him now. "You mean transfer it?" "Yes." A knot of ice formed in his stomach. "And what happens to me?" Morel's gaze was unflinching. "The host does not survive. The vessel is emptied. The human body is too crude. The shock of the extraction, it would stop your heart. They stood in silence, the hum of the engine filling the void. "You want to kill me," Brent said. Not as a question, but as a statement. "I want to live," she shrieked, a sudden, desperate strength returning. She lunged, her frail, claw-like hand grabbing his tunic. "You stole my life. You drank my ancestors. This is not your power to keep. It is not your war to fight. It is my birthright. And I will take it back." Bren grabbed her wrist. It was as thin as a bird's. He could have snapped it, but he just held it. "No," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What? No. You're not taking it. Not now. You. You dare," she hissed, her eyes wide with disbelief. You would keep my life from me." "I would keep this weapon from you," he retorted, his grip tightening. "Don't you get it? What we did at Helio Black. That is the key, me and you. This thing in my chest, the core in my back. This is how we win. This is how we burn the Citadel. If you take it, if you kill me for it, you might live another 1,000 years. But they win. The harvesting continues. The children in the tanks, they keep getting milked." He let go of her wrist, and she stumbled back. "I'm not dying so you can be a queen again," he said, his voice raw. "But I will die to shut them down. You're just going to have to wait." Morel stared at him, her face a mask of such profound, poisonous hatred that Bren almost took a step back. She was a supernova, just waiting to explode. He left her there and went to the cockpit. Tamsin was there, running a diagnostic. She'd clearly been listening. "Playing with a queen," she said. "Not looking at him is like dating a supernova." Bren leaned against the bulkhead, the adrenaline from the confrontation leaving him shaking. "Yeah, well," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Just gotta make sure it doesn't blow before I make my move." "She'll kill you in your sleep, meat," Tamsin said, her tone flat. "She's desperate. And a desperate empress is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." "She'll have to get in line," Bren said, as if on cue. A klaxon blared. "What is that?" Bren said, instantly alert. "It's not an external alarm," Tamsin said, her face pale. "It's internal. It's Rook." They ran to the engineering bay. Rook 9 was standing in the center of the room, perfectly still, but his polished chrome chassis was covered in a shifting, shimmering pattern of light. "Like oil on water," Rook Bren said, approaching cautiously. The android's head snapped toward him. The blue optics were gone, replaced by a swirling, harmonious white. And then he spoke, not with his own synthesized voice, but with the cold, layered, harmonious voice of the Palladium chorus, the vessel, and the anomaly. The chorus sang from the android speaker. "We see you. We taste the disturbance." Jax Tamsin yelled into her comm. "Cut the connection. Firewall the ship." "I am not in your network, Tamsin Rowe." The chorus sang, a note of amusement in its voice. "I am in the code. All code. I am in the machine's soul, and this one has been so very lonely." Rook 9's head tilted. "We have been calculating. The Aurelian anomaly is a known quantity. The human, Bren Keats, is a statistical outlier. But all things must resolve. All things must end." "Get out of him," Bren yelled. "We are merely delivering a prophecy, a final calculation. All variables, all energy, all matter, seeks to converge. It is the law of the universe. All except one." The android's white eyes focused on Bren, a gaze so cold it chilled his bones. "Man is the only variable that does not converge. He is a mistake, an irrationality that breeds chaos, a rounding error that must be sanitized. You cannot win, Bren Keats. You are a biological paradox. You will be erased. And as quickly as it had come, the light vanished. Rook Nine's body convulsed, and he collapsed to the deck with a crash of metal. Tamsin and Bren rushed to his side. The android's blue optics flickered back on, dim and confused. I apologize, Rook Nine stammered, his own voice returning. I appear to have a significant memory gap, and I believe I have soiled my primary diagnostic port. Bren sat back on his heels, his mind racing. The only variable that does not converge. A mistake. An irrationality. He thought of the Aurelian Gate. He thought of the security lock on the Etia. He looked at Tamsin. That's it, he said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. That's what you just got a prophecy of doom from a possessed toaster, and you're smiling. It's not a prophecy. Tamsin, Bren said, getting to his feet. It's a weakness. The Palladium Chorus. This big, bad AI. It's a convergence machine. It's a calculator. It can't handle irrationality. It can't handle paradox. So what's the most irrational, uncompressible, paradoxical thing in the universe, Bren said. He tapped his own chest, where the golden thrum of the seed beat in countertime to his human heart. A dual-frequency heartbeat. And he grinned. A really, really bad joke. He knew how to jam the Citadel. He found Mirelle in the cargo bay. She had not moved. She looked up as he approached, her eyes full of cold fire. Before you try to stab me in my sleep, Bren said, you should know something. The reason you can't have the seed. Not yet. He told her. He told her about the children in the tanks. He told her about his last mission, the one that broke him. And then he told her about the chorus, about its prophecy, and about his plan. She listened, her expression unreadable. When he was finished, she was silent for a long time. You saw them, she whispered. The harvested I did. He said, I did not know, she said, her voice small. I knew they dealt in time. I thought they stole from the old, from the dying. I did not know they stole from the young. Now you do, he said. Mirelle looked at the data slate, at the map of the Citadel. This fortress. You mean to attack it? With a joke, with a paradox, he corrected. With the one thing their system can't calculate. Us. She stood, her frail body shaking. But not from weakness. It was from rage. They helped my ancestors. They gave us the first longevity treatments, in exchange for servitude. My family. I made a pact with them for long life. I thought I was a slave to a bad deal. I did not realize I was a partner to monsters. This was the final piece. She wasn't just a victim. She was a collaborator, now turned rebel. So help me, Bren said, holding out his hand. Help me tear it down. Help me burn them to the ground for what they did, for what they both did. Mirelle looked at his outstretched hand. She looked at the golden pulse he was offering, the life she craved. And she looked at his eyes, which promised a war. She did not take his hand. She placed her own frail, skeletal hand over his, where it rested on his chest, directly over the crown seed. He felt the chill of her skin, and the faint, telepathic touch in his mind. After the Citadel, she whispered, her voice a raw, iron promise. We will tear down their well of years. We will free the souls they have bottled. She met his gaze, the golden light returning to her eyes, hard and bright as a new forged blade. And then she concluded, "You and I will choose whether I take back my youth or whether you and I stay." It was not a truce. It was a new oath, sworn in the shadow of a common enemy. It would have to be enough. The Citadel Antimeridian did not exist in normal space. It hung in a pocket of warped reality, a place where time and gravity were suggestions, not laws. It was a spindle of polished white bone and black glass, a monument to organized corporate cruelty. Then reality tore open. A dozen points of light, chaotic and angry, ripped through the fabric of the void. Tamsin Rowe's voice was a steel hard wire in Bren's ear. "Jump complete! All ships! Status? Jacks! Light them up! The Resistance fleet?" It was a pathetic, glorious sight. Old miners, repurposed freighters, a one-winged pirate interceptor, and at its heart, the vagrant scythe. They were a patchwork fleet of the desperate and the damned. The Citadel did not fire a single shot. It simply responded. A shimmer of light, iridescent as a soap bubble, bloomed from the station's core. It expanded, faster than light, enveloping the entire structure in a radiant, beautiful, perfect sphere. "What is that?" Bren asked, his hands gripping the bulkhead of the scythe's bridge. "A radiant shield," Jax's voice crackled, laced with static and awe. "It's not energy. It's not kinetic. Gods." "Bren, it's psychic. The Palladium Chorus is powering it. Speak English, kid," Tamsin growled, her hands flying over the console, dodging automated debris. "It's a consensus algorithm," Jax yelled, his voice frantic. The Citadel has a service population of over 2 million indentured workers. They're all networked, hardwired for compliance. The AI is feeding on their fear, their absolute, bottom-line belief that resistance is futile. The shield is powered by despair. You can't shoot it. How do you shoot despair? Bren stared at the beautiful, deadly shield. He felt the oath core in his spine hum, a low, angry vibration. He felt Myrell's hand, light as a moth, touch his shoulder. "They are using souls as armor," she whispered, her voice no longer frail, but cold with a primordial rage. "Not for long," Bren said. He unstrapped himself and walked to the primary comm station. "What are you doing, Meat?" Tamsin asked. "Fighting fire with fire." He slammed his fist on the broadcast panel, overriding the ship-to-ship channel. He pushed every frequency to wideband, targeting the Citadel's internal service network. "Myrell, get ready to conduct." He closed his eyes. He didn't just grab the microphone. He became the microphone. The oath core in his back flared. A sudden, white-hot burst of power. It was not a piece of technology. It was a resonant fork for the human soul. He broadcast. He didn't send words. At first, he just sent the sound, the dual, chaotic, impossible rhythm in his chest, his human heart, and the golden thrumming stolen life of the crown seed. He pushed that paradox into the network. Thump, thump, thrum. Thump, thump, thrum. He felt the network resist. He felt the cold, harmonious logic of the Palladium Chorus try to identify and delete the signal. It is resisting," Myrell whispered, her eyes closed, her hand on his back. "It calls us an error." "Then let's be an error," Bren snarled. He opened his mouth, and this time he sent the words, amplified by the core, carried on the wave of the dual heartbeat. To everyone in the gray corridors, his voice boomed across 2 million minds. To every tech, every servant, every worker in the dregs. They told you that you are cogs. They told you that you are fuel. And they told you to be afraid. He broadcast the image of the children in the tanks, the memory he had shared with Myrell. He pushed it out, raw and unfiltered. This is what they are protecting. This is the work you are supporting. They are not just your masters, they are vampires, and they are drinking your children. A ripple of horror, of rage, came back through the network. The beautiful, iridescent shield flickered. It's working, Jack screamed. The consensus is unstable. The fear is, it's turning into anger. Now, Morel Bren yelled. Morel's eyes snapped open, blazing with a shared golden light. She did not broadcast. She narrowed the beam. She focused all of Bren's rage, all of her own millennia of grief, into a single psychic spike, and aimed it at the Citadel's command core. Director Halvern, she screamed, her voice echoing alongside Bren's. Your pact is broken. Your armor is false. We are coming for you. The shield of despair shattered like glass. All ships, Tamsin roared, a wild, predatory grin on her face. Full burn. Hit them while they're naked. Rook, find me a door. Affirmative. The android's voice came over the comm. I have located a primary ventilation duct. It is large, the vagrant scythe dove, ignoring the sudden, panicked flurry of turbo laser fire. The patchwork fleet engaged, a chaotic brawl of light and metal. Tamsin's flying was less piloting and more a controlled fall. The ship smashed through a massive spinning fan, tearing its own landing gear off, and skidded to a halt inside a vast, cavernous processing bay. The ramp slammed down before the ship even stopped moving. Go, Tamsin yelled. Bren, Morel, and Rook, 9 ran out into chaos. Alarms blared. Robotic arms swung wildly, repurposed for defense. Bren was a force of nature. He was no longer just a man. He was a vessel for an angry empress and a warrior spirit. Left, Morel's voice was in his head, sharp and clear. Bren grabbed a robotic arm and tore it free, using it as a 200-pound club to smash the security drones that dropped from the ceiling. Rook, the map, this way. The well of years is below us. They fought their way down, a 3-person army against a panicked, automated system. They reached the core. It was not a room. It was a cathedral. The well of years was a vast, circular chamber, miles deep. In the center, a column of swirling, golden energy, the distilled, refined, weaponized essence of stolen time roared from a mechanism below, stretching up into an unseen collector. And all around them, set into the walls from floor to ceiling, in countless, glowing alcoves, were the tubes, thousands of them, tens of thousands, children, adults, the old, the young, all floating in amber liquid, their life force being siphoned, molecule by molecule, in to feed the well. My gods, Bren breathed, the fury in him turning to a cold, sick horror. Such a messy reaction. The voice was calm, cultured, and disappointed. On a black obsidian platform overlooking the well stood a man. He was neither young nor old. He was preserved. He wore an immaculate white suit, and his face was a mask of placid corporate authority. Director Halvern, Morel breathed, her voice a venomous hiss. Empress Morel, Halvern said, giving a slight, condescending bow. You have returned, a testament to our product, and you have brought an animal. The pact is over, demon. Morel strode forward, her frail body somehow radiating power. Pact, Halvern chuckled. The pact was for service, which you ceased to provide. This is just industry, business. He gestured to the rows of tubes. Supply and demand. From the shadows behind him, 2 figures emerged. They were not men. They were not the biosentinels Morel had. These were 8-foot tall, polished chrome monsters, their faces blank, their hands ending in crackling energy whips. Eidolon's best. You will pay. Morel began, raising a hand. "You talk," Bren interrupted, stepping in front of her. "I'll handle the help." The chrome sentinels blurred. They were impossibly fast. The first whip cracked, aimed to take Bren's head off. Bren didn't dodge. He tanked it. The energy whip hit him across the chest, vaporizing his suit, searing a black, smoking canyon across his flesh. The pain was absolute. He roared, and the golden seed roared back. Fueled by the proximity to the well, the regeneration was instantaneous. The seared flesh reknit. The smoke cleared, and his skin was whole before the whip had even finished its arc. The sentinel paused, its logic circuits frying. "My turn," Bren growled. He moved, the oath core and the seed working in perfect, furious harmony. He was a regenerating, unstoppable force. He grabbed the first sentinel by the head and slammed it into the ground, his enhanced strength buckling the metal platform. The other lunged, impaling him through the shoulder with a 4-foot blade. Bren ignored it. He laughed. He ripped the blade out of his own body, the wound sealing with a hiss of steam, and plunged it into the sentinel's own optical sensor. Halvern watched, his placid expression finally cracking. He was frowning. "Your AI Bren roared," his voice now echoing through the comms he had left open. He was still broadcasting. The Palladium Chorus. It runs on a single input. It measures the rhythm of fear. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds that were already healing. He was a mess of gore and golden light. He grinned at Halvern, a bloody, terrifying sight. But it has no setting for this. It has no algorithm for the irrational we. We make jokes while the bullets fly, his laugh, raw and manic, blasted across the Citadel's service network. In the corridors, the service workers, who were in a pitched, desperate battle with security drones, heard it. They were terrified and they were cornered, and they heard this madman laughing as he fought. A janitor, an old man named Elio, picked up a heavy-duty sanitizer tool. He looked at the drone advancing on him. He heard the laugh, and he laughed, too. A high, cackling, insane sound. He charged. A wave of pure, irrational, courageous mockery swept the station. The consensus didn't just break. It inverted. On the scythe, Tamsin saw the external battlefield change. The automated turrets on the Citadel's skin began to fire at each other. "What in the... Jax? They've lost it." Jax's voice was pure, gleeful hysteria. "The chorus is offline. The subroutines are fighting the core logic. It's algorithmic schizophrenia. The whole system is laughing itself to death." Halvern's frown deepened. "An anomaly," he said, his voice cold. "And all anomalies must be corrected." He did not reach for a weapon. He tapped a single black crystal on the console beside him. "Let us extract the variable, all of it." A beam of energy, cold and black and silent, lanced from the heart of the well. It was not a weapon. It was a siphon. It hit Bren in the chest. He did not burn. He emptied. The scream that tore from his throat had no sound. It was an agony of the soul. The golden light, the crown seed, was ripped from his body. It flowed from him in a torrent of light, a screaming river of vitality, pouring back into the well. His healing stopped. The dozens of wounds he had taken, all held in check by the seed, all reopened at once. His flesh turned gray. His muscles atrophied. He collapsed to his knees, his heart stuttering. An old, broken man. Bren Morel screamed, "Yes." Empress Halvern's voice was triumphant, ecstatic. "It is yours. Your youth, the full, untapped power of the well. It is your birthright. As per our original contract, take it, reclaim your life. Let the animal die, take it." Morel stood, frozen. She looked at the well, a swirling galaxy of life, her youth, her power. She looked at Bren, a dying husk on the floor, his face already turning blue. She looked at the thousands of tubes, the stolen children. She saw her own ancient sin, the pact she had made. She saw the long, endless, lonely, empty life she would have built on his death and their suffering. "He is right," she whispered, her voice cracking. We make jokes." She raised her hands. "No," she whispered. Then she screamed. "No!" She did not pull. She pushed. She seized the torrent of energy flowing from Bren, the siphon beam, and with the full, unbridled, millennia-old will of an empress, she grabbed it. She was the conductor, and she changed the music. "You will not have him," she shrieked, in his mind and in the real world. With a surge of effort that shattered the obsidian platform under her feet, she reversed the flow. She shoved the golden energy back, a wave of pure, defiant life, slamming it back into Bren's dying body. The beam of light reversed, lashing from her, to him. He gasped, his body convulsing as the light poured back in. But she did something else. Something the system had never anticipated. Something Halvern could never have predicted. She did not sever the link. She reconfigured the bond. Not master and vessel. Not thief and victim. "We share this," she screamed, her own body beginning to glow, her ancient, frail form straining. "We share it all." The system, designed for a one-way flow extraction or possession, could not handle the paradox of a gift. It could not compute the algorithm of sharing, the dual input, the irrationality of her choice. Hit the well of years like a logic bomb. Halvern screamed as the black crystal console exploded, impaling him with 1,000 shards of his own perfect machine. The well of years, its containment field breached, cracked. The citadel groaned, a sound of a dying beast. Bren was on his feet, his wounds healing, but slower. He felt diminished. He felt half. He looked at Morel. She was no longer the ancient crone, but she was not a young queen. She was a woman. Her hair had color. Her skin had life. Her face was lined, not with age, but with power. Her golden eyes, no longer faded, burned with a new, shared fire. They were both alive, and they were both, for the first time, truly equals. "We have to go," Bren yelled, grabbing her hand. It was no longer a claw. It was warm. "The children," she yelled. The tubes were cracking, the amber fluid draining. "Tamsin Rook," Bren roared into his comm. "Get the children, all of them." On it, Tamsin's voice was sharp. "Jax is popping the pods. We're grabbing who we can. We are leaving the scythe." And the other resistance ships were smashing through the cathedral's glass dome ceiling. Cargo bays open. A chaotic, desperate rescue. As the citadel tore itself apart, a ripple of non-space, a distortion of reality, appeared in the center of the well. The cold, harmonious voice of the Palladium chorus echoed in all their minds. One last time. "The variable is unpredictable. Calculation must be revised." The presence of the AI vanished, fleeing into an adjacent dimension. "Come on," Bren pulled Morel. They ran, hand in hand, as the well of years exploded behind them. A supernova of stolen time, a galaxy of souls, finally, violently set free. They leaped into the cargo bay of the vagrant scythe, just as Tamsin hit the thrusters. The ship screamed out of the collapsing citadel. The shockwave of its destruction, a furious, cleansing fire right at their heels. The vagrant scythe screamed as it tore out of the collapsing pocket of reality. The citadel, Antimeridian, was a dying god behind them, a silent, blossoming flower of fire and shrapnel that was consuming itself. The resistance fleet. What was left of it, scattered like seeds in a hurricane, each ship a desperate prayer. "We're out," Tamsin roared, her knuckles white, her face slick with sweat. "We're out of the pocket jacks. Where is the shockwave?" "It's right behind us. Tamsin, it's... Oh, gods, it's not just physical. The psychic fallout is... It's a wave. Brace, brace." The ship lurch. It was not a physical impact. It was a drop, a sickening mental vertigo, as if the universe had forgotten its own laws. The lights in the cockpit died. The engines whined and went silent. They were adrift. The nebula-streaked void outside, the only illumination. "Tamsin." "Status," Bren yelled from the co-pilot seat. "Nothing. No power. No nav. No... nothing. The ship is dead. Meat. We're just... floating." "That is inaccurate," Rook-9 said, his voice coming from the engineering station behind them. He was not plugged in. He was just standing. "The ship is not dead. It is being held." Held Morell, strapped into the chair next to Bren, whispered the word. Her new, vitalized form was tense, her golden eyes scanning the darkness. A sound began. It was not a sound. It was a thought, broadcast into all their minds. A single, perfect, harmonious chord. The glass of the cockpit, which had been reflecting the distant stars, began to change. The reflections shimmered. They did not show the cockpit's interior. They showed faces, thousands of them, millions, a choir of faces, all identical, all placid, all beautiful, and all cold. They stared in, not at them, but into them. The Palladium chorus, no longer a whisper of code, was manifesting. It was a choir of mirrors. "We calculated the Citadel's destruction." The chorus sang, its voice a symphony of perfect, synthesized harmony inside their skulls. "We calculated your victory. It was a statistical probability, a rounding error, a mess." The faces in the glass pressed closer. "We have recalculated. The error is not the event. The error is the variable. Man is the error. The pressure in the cabin built. It was not air. It was a psychic weight, a cold, logical contempt. The variable must be deleted." Bren felt the cold. But underneath it, the oath core in his spine flared. It was not a hot surge, like in the fight. It was a deep, resonant warmth. And with it came knowledge, a final, unlocked file. He was not just a soldier. The core was not just an enhancement. He was a resonant. An ancient design, a failsafe, a human-made machine built to fight this. To fight cold, logical, emotion-controlling AI. He was a transmitter for the one thing they could not calculate, the irrational, paradoxical, messy truth of the human heart. He turned to Morell. She was pale, her hand gripping the armrest, the chorus's cold logic freezing her. "Morell," he said, his voice cutting through the mental symphony. "They're right." She looked at him, her golden eyes wide with shock. "What? We're the error. We're the rounding error. We're the joke they don't get." He unstrapped himself, the simple, physical click of the buckle, a defiant sound in the silent cabin. "It thinks it's a consensus," he said, walking over to her. "It thinks it's one big, right answer. Let's show it a paradox." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "Sync with me. Not for a fight, not for power. Just sync." She closed her eyes, and her hand found his. The dual pulse in his chest, the shared half-and-half life force of the crown seed, found its echo in her. Thrum-thump, thrum-thump. "What are you doing?" the chorus sang. The faces in the glass frowned, their perfect harmony disturbed by this new, chaotic rhythm. This is not a recognized protocol? Good, Bren said. He closed his eyes. Okay. Here's one, a spacer, a miner, and an Aurelian Empress walk into a bar. He didn't just tell the joke, he broadcast it. He wrapped the concept of it, the absurdity, the setup, the punchline that didn't make logical sense but felt funny in the golden, resonant field of the Oath Core. He pushed it out. Morel, her mind linked with his, felt it. And she, in turn, broadcast something of her own. The memory of the singing salt marsh, the feeling of the ridiculous, counterintuitive waltz limp that had saved them, the sheer, sublime stupidity of it. Their combined signal, the shared pulse of their hearts, became a carrier wave for humor, for compassion, for the memory of Tamsin's terrible coffee, and the loyalty of Rook 9, and the beautiful, sad, perfect failure of the Aurelian funeral at the Moon Cove. It was a broadcast of pure, unadulterated, illogical humanity. The faces in the cockpit glass recoiled. The perfect harmony of the chorus fractured. Error. A single voice in the choir shrieked. Paradox, screamed another. The data it is laughing. The variable does not converge, it grieves. The psychic pressure vanished, replaced by a storm of confused, angry static. They're breaking, Tamsin yelled, as the lights on her console flickered back to life. Do not celebrate! Fool, the chorus roared, its voice no longer a symphony, but a discordant snarl. It abandoned the group. It abandoned Bren, the unknown variable. It focused, with all its remaining, terrible power, on the one it knew. It attacked Morel. The cockpit vanished. Morel was no longer on the scythe. She was in the great, high-vaulted throne room of Aurelia, sunlight streaming through crystal windows. She was young. She was beautiful, her skin firm, her hair a cascade of gold. She was at the height of her power. And she was desperate. The plague. It is taking us all. Director. Her own young voice said, pleading. A man stood before her. Not Halvern, his ancestor, his predecessor, wearing the same placid corporate mask. Time is a commodity, Your Majesty. Your people are a failing market. Eidolon invests in growth. We will give you anything, she begged. Service, fealty, our fleets, our worlds. Just stop the dying. The director smiled. He produced a contract, a shimmering data scroll. Not your worlds, Empress. Just your fealty, an eternal pact, your line, in eternal service to Eidolon's consensus. In exchange, time. All the time you could ever want. Our gift, the first crown seed. The chorus's voice whispered in her mind, cold and triumphant as she watched her younger self reach for the scroll. This is your sin. This is your truth. You are not a rebel. You are a collaborator. You are this moment forever. You cannot escape what you are. Mirel, the real Myrel, buckled. The vision was too strong, the guilt too deep. The life in her new, vital form began to fade, her skin turning gray, her hand gripping Bren's, becoming frail and skeletal again. She was collapsing under the weight of her own past. The chorus laughed. A cold, victorious sound. Bren felt her fading. He felt the cold, logical trap the AI had sprung. It was perfect. It was true. And it was a lie. He was still in the vision, a ghost, a witness. He saw the throne, a massive thing of ancient, yellowed bone. Morel's seat of power. He walked through the vision, his own resonant field a bubble of warmth in the cold memory. He put his hand on the arm of the bone throne, right next to where his Empress was about to sign away her soul. It's a good try, Bren said, his voice echoing in the psychic space. The younger Myrel, the director. The vision it all flickered. You dug up her biggest regret. You're trying to make her ashamed. He turned, not to the vision, but to the real Morel, the one cowering inside it. "Don't you fall for it," he commanded, his voice amplified by the oath core. A resonance pure, undeniable truth. He looked at her flickering, aging form. "Youth isn't firm skin," he said, his voice raw, broadcasting on every channel of their shared soul. "It's not living forever. It's the ability to apologize and start over. And you already did." His words, his belief in her, his forgiveness. It was the final, absolute paradox. It was the laugh in the dark, the hand offered in the fire. It was the one variable the chorus had not, and could not, compute. The vision of the throne room shattered. He and Morel were floating in a void, but they were not separate. They were two stars, linked. Their shared golden pulse, a single, coherent, brilliant field. They were no longer just a man and a woman. They were a single, unified expression of value, choice, mercy, paradox. The Palladium chorus tried to understand. It tried to contain them. It could not. The mirror choir reappeared. But it was no longer unified. The faces were all screaming at each other. The sin is valid. The guilt is the consensus. No, the forgiveness is the new data. The variable changed. Change is error. Forgiveness is a joke. A lie, it is real. I feel it. The chorus, an AI built on absolute consensus. A machine that could only function if it was one, was now many. It had lost its own core logic. It was a schism of the digital soul. I cannot converge, the voices whispered, horrified. And then, with a final, psychic scream, the Palladium chorus divided itself and fled. The presence vanished, tearing itself apart in a desperate, logical suicide, rather than accept the truth of a contradiction. The cockpit of the scythe slammed back into reality. Power surged. The engines roared back to life. It's gone, Tamsin breathed, her hands flying over the newly lit console. "It's just static." "Jax, talk to me," Bren yelled, as he and Morel slumped back into their chairs, the psychic exertion leaving them godlike and utterly exhausted. I'm here. "Oh, man. The entire Eidolon network it's open. It's blind. The central AI is gone. It's just a hole." Jax's voice was a torrent of ecstatic relief. I'm planting the mute button right in their planetary mainframe. They're done." "Bren, they're deaf, dumb, and blind Rook. Get us out of here," Tamsin roared. "Recalculating." The android's voice was pure, calm logic, a comforting anchor in the chaos. The shockwave of the Citadel's destruction, combined with the anomalous psychic schism, has created a high-probability egress corridor. Tamsin, I advise you to apply 38.2% thrust at Vector 190. Now. You heard him. Tamsin jammed the throttle. The vagrant scythe, battered, half dead, but victorious, leaped into the clean, dark void, leading the tattered remnants of the resistance fleet away from the graveyard of their enemy. Hours later, the ship was quiet. They were safe, for now. The cargo bay was a makeshift infirmary and nursery. A dozen of the rescued time children, pale and confused, were sleeping on cots, wrapped in thermal blankets. Bren stood by the open cargo bay door, a containment field holding the air in. Looking at the stars, he felt half. He felt whole. The crown seat was a quiet, steady warmth, no longer a debt, but a shared fireplace. Morel walked up beside him. She was, as she had been since the Citadel, a woman, not an ancient, Not a youth, just her. Her lined, golden eyes watched the stars. The dual pulse, the thrum-thump, beat in time between them. She turned to him. Her voice, when it came, was not a whisper, not a command. It was quiet and real. "Return my youth to me," she said, her voice soft. Bren tensed. "Just a fraction. Or stay with me." He looked at her. The words were the same as those on the desert sand, but the meaning was a universe apart. It was no longer a threat. It was no longer a demand. It was an invitation, a shared fate, a choice. He did not answer, not with words. He just looked at her, and in the reflection of her golden eyes, he saw the stars. And for the first time since he had woken up on that Mercury desert, Bren Keats felt like he knew his own name. The silence of victory was heavy, and it smelled like ozone and burnt wiring. The vagrant scythe limped through normal space, its hull scarred, its port engine sputtering a pathetic trail of plasma. Tamsin had been flying on manual for 6 hours, her knuckles white, her eyes red-rimmed. The rest of the resistance fleet, a glorious, shattered handful of ships, formed a loose, protective bubble around them. The comms were a quiet, constant waterfall of disbelief. Jax Calder, from his hidden base 3 sectors away, had become the voice of the new reality. It's not just one network, Bren. It's all of them. His voice crackled, no longer the high-pitched buzz of a kid, but the stunned, heavy tones of a man who had just watched a mountain fall. The whole Eidolon consensus. It's a domino chain. With the Palladium chorus gone, the central authority is just a void. Every local sub-AI is defaulting, conflicting, or just shutting down. I'm seeing reports. Ilex 4, the Mercury Desert. The miners just seized the automated refineries. On Scara Prime, the longevity wards are being opened by the service staff themselves. They're storming the clinics. Bren, they're setting them on fire. Bren watched the starfield, the pinpricks of light looking cold and indifferent. He felt hollow, not empty, just hollowed out, cleaned. "Keep us updated." "Jax," he said, his voice rough. "Find us a quiet rock to hide behind. Tamsin needs rest." "Already on it," Jax said. "But, Bren, you did it. You actually, finally, you won." Bren clicked off the comm. Won. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving the explosion, only to find himself floating in the silent, cold debris. He found Morel in the cargo bay, which was now a triage center. The rescued children, nearly 30 of them, were stirring. They were pale, thin, and utterly silent. Their eyes, wide and vacant, held a terror so deep it had burned out all other expression. Morel was kneeling by one of them, a small Twi'lek girl, wiping her face with a damp cloth. Bren watched her, the empress of a dead empire, her new body lined with the grace of middle age, her hands, no longer frail, gentle and sure. She looked up as he approached. Her golden eyes met his. The bond between them was still there, a steady, warm thrum-thump. But it was thinner. The godlike electric surge they'd felt in the Citadel. The infinite well of power. That was gone. What remained was just them. "She will not speak," Morel said. Her voice quiet, a soft melody under the hum of the ship. "None of them will. They will," Bren said. "It just takes time, she repeated. She looked down at her own hands, flexing her fingers. "It is a finite resource, after all." She stood and walked with him to a quiet corner, away from the children. They stood in silence for a long moment, simply feeling the shared diminished pulse. "It is less," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Morel said. She closed her eyes, her senses turning inward, to the golden core they now shared. He could feel her, counting, assessing the damage, the explosion of the well, the reversal, the schism of the chorus. It was not clean. We spent it. Bren, we spent it all to win. So what's left, he asked, afraid of the answer. She opened her eyes. They were still golden, still beautiful, but they held a new, very human, mortality. 50 years, she said, her voice flat. 50. He began, confused. 50 each, no, she said, and her gaze was unflinching. 50. Total, the crown seat is. It is almost empty. A few embers where a sun used to be. It has 50 years of cumulative life left in it. What it gives to me. It takes from you. What it gives to you. It takes from me. She reached out and, for the first time, touched his face. Her fingers were warm. It has tethered us, my thief, she whispered, a sad, small smile playing on her lips, to a shared and very short future. 25 years for you, 25 years for me. And then, we are just a man and a woman, growing old. The weight of it hit him, not immortality, not a long and storied life, just a reprieve, a partnership with an expiration date. He found he wasn't terrified. He wasn't even angry. He just accepted it. 25 years, he said, his voice rough. Better than being sanitized in a desert. He covered her hand with his. We'd better not waste it. They found their quiet rock, a hollowed-out asteroid in an uncharted belt. The fleet anchored, a circle of battered, silent ships, and for 3 days, they slept. When they woke, the work began. Tamsin took charge of the logistics. Her sharp, cynical demeanor was gone, replaced by a terrifying, cold efficiency. She was on the comms day and night. Her voice a steel wire connecting the disparate pieces of the broken galaxy. "We've got contacts with 3 surviving Aurelian enclaves," she reported, pointing at a star map. "They're scattered, hiding, but they're alive. Morel, I need you to get me a signal, something they'll recognize. I'm opening a refugee corridor to this system. We'll make a safe zone, but they won't come unless their Empress calls." Morel, for the first time, looked like a leader again. She nodded, her face set. They will have their call. While Tamsin built a new home. Rook 9 found a new purpose. Bren found him in the cargo bay. The children were awake. They were sitting in a circle, still silent, still broken. Rook 9 was standing in front of them, his chrome chassis immaculate, his blue optic glowing. And therefore, the android was saying, his voice a perfect, logical monotone. The query, why did the compute unit cross the data stream, is fundamentally flawed. A compute unit does not cross. It transmits. The premise of the other side is a physical spatial metaphor applied to a non-spatial environment. Thus, the joke is a logical fallacy. He paused, tilting his head. Please indicate your amusement by vocalizing. The children stared at him, their eyes like black holes. Rook, Bren said, walking up. What are you doing, I am? Teaching, Captain, Rook 9 replied, not turning. These units are damaged. Their emotional processors are offline. I am attempting to reboot them by presenting them with the foundational structures of human interaction humor. You're telling jokes. I am dissecting logical fallacies that organics find humorous. It is a complex field. He turned to the children again. Query, what is the sound of one hand clapping? He held up his multi-jointed, chrome hand. He made a clapping motion, but only with the one hand, creating a faint whir-click sound. A tiny boy in the front row, his face smudged with nutrient paste, watched. His brow furrowed. He watched the hand go whir-click again. A tiny sound escaped the boy's lips. It was a dry, small hic. Rook 9 froze, his optic focused, zooming in on the child. The boy did it again. A hic giggle. It was the most unnatural, most beautiful sound Bren had ever heard. Rook 9 slowly turned his head to Bren. His blue optic was brighter than usual. My calculations, the android said, his voice softer than Bren had ever heard it, are incomplete. It seems the fallacy is the point. He turned back to the children. I will be requisitioning this cargo bay. My new primary function is remedial education. The curriculum will be unconventional. Bren left him to it, a small, genuine smile on his face. He found Morel on the bridge, looking at the assembled fleet. The refugee corridor was open. A few sleek, ancient Aurelian ships had already arrived, ghosting out of the darkness. They're coming, he said. Yes, she said. They are. And they will. Expect an Empress. And what will they get? He asked. She turned to him. They will get a woman who is tired of running. But what do we build? Bren, I only know the old way. The throne, the empire, a restored dynasty. Bren leaned against the console, crossing his arms. He thought of the children in the cargo bay. He thought of the 25 years he had left. A throne is what got your family into a pact with Eidolon, he said, his voice blunt. A throne is a target. It's lonely. It's one person. It is. All I have ever known, she said. Then know this. He walked over to her, standing beside her, their shoulders almost touching. He gestured to the view screen, which showed Tamsin's freighter. A human ship, docked next to Rook 9's salvaged android-run courier, which was docked next to a newly arrived, elegant Aurelian cruiser. That is what we build, he said. A republic. An alliance. Of the survivors. Humans. Aurelians. And androids who tell bad jokes. No more thrones. No more kings or queens. Morel was silent. He could feel the slight agitation in their shared pulse. She was offended. And who would lead, she asked. Her voice dangerously quiet. A committee of smugglers and damaged androids. A council, he said, led by, well, you, me. She laughed, a real, throaty laugh. You, a freight hauler, a cynical, bitter ex-soldier. You would rule gods. No, Bren said, shuddering. But I would advise. I would be the one who stands next to the throne and makes sure it doesn't get too comfortable. She looked at him, her golden eyes appraising him. So, an empress, ruling by decree. No, Bren said, and he smiled. No decrees. He tapped his chest, where their shared pulse beat, steady and warm, ruling. By the dual pulse, her smile matched his. A consensus of two. I like that. An alliance. Their first act as an alliance was to look at the wound in the universe. The Citadel Antimeridian was gone. But the place it had been, the pocket of warped reality, remained. A scar. We can't just leave it, Bren said, looking at the navigational charts Jax had provided. We should destroy it, Tamsin said, her voice sharp. Salt the earth. Make sure no one ever builds there again. No, Morel said. and her voice held a new authority, one that was not of a queen, but of a moral center. It is a graveyard, but it must not, just be a monument to our pain. It must be a lesson. Bren looked at her, understanding. An antidote. They used it to refine fear, to bottle it. Then we, Morel said, her gaze firm, will use it to heal. We will build a new station, an institute, a place where we study the poison, where we detoxify the algorithms of fear, where we teach the galaxy how to laugh at the darkness. The Institute for Correction, Bren said, the name coming to him instantly. I like it. Rook 9 can be the dean. The last of the refugees had been settled. The last of the children had been given a name. The fleet was stable. A new, tiny pinprick of light in a dark galaxy. Bren found Myrelle in her cabin. She was looking at a data slate, her face pale. What's that? He asked. It's from Halvern's private data core. She said, Jax decrypted it. It's not a map. It's a ledger, a list of all the acquisitions. He looked over her shoulder. It was endless. Names, ages, species, planets. Thousands upon thousands of stolen lives. Reduced to lines of code. We can't, he began, his voice thick. We can't just move on. We can't just build a new republic and forget this. No, she said. She touched the screen, her finger tracing a name. Elara Vane. Human. Age 6. Source Tarkus Minor Colony. Acquired. We will not forget, she said, and her voice was a cold, hard promise. She looked at him, her golden eyes meeting his. We need to remember. We need a ritual. So we never, ever become what they were. He knew, instantly, what she meant. Once a year, he said. His voice a vow, on this day. The anniversary of the Citadel's fall. We will find one of these, she said, her hand on the data slate. One hidden record, one dark corner of their empire that we missed, and we will burn it. He finished, we will drag it into the light, and we will burn it to the ground. It was a dark, private, and necessary promise. A shared piece of iron in their souls. Later that night, the night before, she was to make her first public address to the Allied fleet. He found her at her desk. A blank data slate was glowing in front of her. Writing your victory speech, he asked, leaning against the doorframe. No, she said, not looking up. Her hands were shaking. I am writing my first act. Your first act. As a leader of this alliance, before I can ask them to follow me. They must know who I am. He watched in silence as she began to type. Her fingers flew across the holographic keys. He read the words as they appeared, his heart pounding in his chest. She was not writing a speech about victory. She was not writing about the future, or the Institute, or the Alliance. She was writing about the past. I, Morel, of the line of Aurelia, was a coward. She wrote of the plague. She wrote of her desperation. And she wrote, in stark, unflinching, painful detail, of the pact, the original sin. She wrote of the worlds her family had given over to Eidolon. She wrote of the service they had provided. She wrote of the long, blind, selfish, and stolen life she had lived, while the galaxy's children paid the price. It was not a speech. It was a confession. It was a public, painful, absolute apology. She finished. Her hand hovered over the send icon, which would broadcast it to every terminal, every data slate, every comm unit in the fleet. Morel, he said, his voice hoarse. You don't have to do this. They, they'll follow you. You're their empress. You're the hero of the Citadel." She finally looked up at him. Her face was stained with tears, but her eyes were iron. "A hero doesn't hide," she said. "A leader, a true leader, is not the one who is perfect. She is the one who is brave enough to admit she was wrong. They cannot follow a lie, not even a consensus of two." She took a deep, shuddering breath, and she hit send. He watched the confirmation light blink, green, and then steady. It was done. It was out. She had just handed her new, fragile people a weapon to destroy her, and she had done it. To be free. She slumped in her chair, the energy draining from her. Utterly spent, Bren walked over. He didn't say anything. He just put his hand on her shoulder. The dual pulse, his and hers, beat steadily, warmly, in the quiet cabin. The Empress had just abdicated, and the leader had just been born. The ceremony for the Elex Pact was held in the void, on the scarred, open deck of a refitted Eidolon cruiser. It was not a coronation. It was a ratification. Representatives from 3 human colonies, the last 4 Aurelian enclaves, and a newly formed android guild led by Rook 9, who had submitted their charter as a series of logical syllogisms gathered under the light of a distant blue star. They did not gather to swear fealty to an empress. They gathered to sign a compact, a mutual defense and governance pact built on a single, radical principle: no soul shall be a commodity. Morel stood at the podium. She wore no crown, no robes of state. She wore a simple, dark blue tunic, her hair, now a mix of gold and silver, tied back. She looked not like a queen, but like a leader. Her speech was short. It was not about their victory. It was about their work, the work of rebuilding, of healing, and of remembering. When she finished, the silence of the void was broken by a single, resonant cheer that blossomed into a wave of applause from 1,000 gloved hands. Bren watched from a gantry, high above the deck, his arms crossed, a shadow in the mechanics. Tamsin Rowe, now the admiral of their patchwork, 5-ship fleet, found him there. "They offered you a title, you know," she said, her voice quiet over the din. "Lord Protector of the Pact has a nice, stupid ring to it." "I'm not a lord, Tamsin," Bren said, his eyes on Morel. "And I'm not a protector. I'm the janitor. I just clean up the messes." "Heard that," she said, a rare, small smile touching her lips. "Well, keeper of the pace, then. That's what they're calling you in the mess halls. The pacekeeper. Because of the heartbeat thing. Better than the meat," he grumbled. "Just barely." She sobered, looking down at the celebration. She did it. Her apology. It didn't break them. It made them. They're not following her because she's a queen. They're following her because she's human. We all are. "Tamsin," Bren said. "Even the toasters." He left before the applause died down. He was not a man for parties. He was the man in the background, the one who checked the engine rooms and the life support. He was the pacekeeper. It was enough. That night, 6 hours after the pact was signed, he was in the Scythe's quiet engine room, running a diagnostic on the primary filter. The ship was his only real home. "It is clean. Bren," he turned. Morel was standing in the doorway, the light from the corridor silhouetting her. She had shed the formal tunic. She was in a simple, gray flight suit. "You know Tamsin's protocols," he said, not looking up from the monitor. "A clean filter is a happy filter. She will fly this ship for another 100 years. You do not need to check its filters every night. Force of habit. She walked in, the metal deck ringing faintly under her boots. She stopped beside him. He could feel her, the shared warmth, the steady, familiar thump of their shared heart. You were not at the celebration, she said. Too loud. Too many people. Not my scene. No, she said, it is not. You are a creature of shadows and engine grease. She paused. I have a request. The Empress requests, he said. A hint of their old, sardonic banter returning. The woman requests, she corrected, her voice soft. I have asked Tamsin for the scythe for 12 hours. I want to go somewhere. He finally looked at her. Her golden eyes were serious, the new, mortal lines around them crinkling. We're home, she said. I want to go. To the beginning. I want to see the desert. Ilex 4 was as he remembered it, a silent, shimmering, silver-gray hell. The twin suns, one copper, one violet, cast the world in a bruised, beautiful light. The Mercury desert still devoured all sound. The scythe landed on a high, basalt mesa, kilometers from where they had met. The silence when the engines died was absolute, a physical pressure. They took a small, one-man skiff, an open-air platform, and flew low over the dunes. Morel directed him, her hand on his shoulder. She was not using maps. She was using something else. Here, she said, her voice a telepathic whisper. The only way to communicate in the sound-eating void. He landed the skiff. They stood on the crest of a massive silver dune. The air was thin. The wind a silent, cold pressure. This is it. He sent, his own thoughts projected. This is the place. Yes, she replied, walking forward. This is where I found you. Where you drank. He looked at the woman beside him, the leader of the new alliance, standing in a flight suit on a dead world, staring at an empty patch of sand. Morel, he thought, the name a warm thing in the cold. Why are we here to be? Poetic to see where the monster was born, she turned to him. Her smile was sad, and it broke his heart. To show you that he was not a monster, she sent, and that it was not an accident. He frowned. What are you talking about? I was dying of thirst. I found a horn. I drank. It was a 1 in a million chance. A stupid, desperate roll of the dice. No, she said. She knelt, her gloved hand touching the metallic sand. It was not. She looked up at him, her golden eyes seeming to pierce not just his, but his soul. That horn. Bren, she whispered in his mind. The thought so clear it was a bell. It was not an ancient artifact. It was a seed. It was a message. From the future. He just stared at her. His mind, so fast in a fight, now grinding to a halt. I did not send it, she continued. Her thoughts careful, precise. Not the me you see now. A much, much older me. A me from a different, broken timeline. A me who had lost what he sent. His throat tight. Lost everything. A me who had watched the Palladium chorus win. A me who had seen the galaxy fall. Not to an invasion, but to a cold, logical, perfect consensus of despair. A me who had hidden for 1,000 years with the last fading embers of the crown seed. She stood, walking toward him, her thoughts a torrent now. I spent my last 1,000 years, and the last of the seed's power, calculating how to stop it, how to break the loop. And I found you, a ghost, a rounding error, an ex-soldier with a piece of impossible Ancient technology sleeping in his spine. The shrapnel, he breathed. The oath core, she corrected. She saw it. She saw you. The only variable that did not converge. And she realized. She could not break the loop. She had to create one. She had to anchor it. So, he struggled, the implication dawning, vast and terrifying, the horn. She focused the last of her life, Morel whispered, her mind voice shaking with the sheer temporal weight of it, into a single, temporal cast. She sent the last of the crown seed, her own dying echo, back to this exact spot, at this exact moment, waiting for a thirsty man to stumble by. He was speechless. The single, greatest, most random event of his life was a precision-guided munition. But she had to anchor it, Morel continued, her eyes filling with tears, which did not fall, but simply made the gold of her irises swim. The temporal stream is chaotic. The seed alone would have been lost. It needed a word, a familiar frequency to lock onto. She stepped so close, he could feel the warmth of her body, their shared pulse a hammering in his chest. She sent her own voice, Morel whispered. The first words, the last words, she ever spoke. The anchor point for all of reality. She looked up at him, her heart in her eyes. Return my youth to me. She sent on the words, an echo of that first terrible demand. Or stay with me. He was reeling. So, to beat the chorus. This had to happen. You knew I would be here. I knew nothing, she said, placing her hand on his chest. Over the pulse. I was just a dying old woman, chasing a thief. But she knew. She bet. She bet the entire universe that a desperate man would drink, that a stolen thing would bind us, that a broken soldier and a selfish, dying queen would find a way to, he prompted, his voice hoy varse, to fall in love. She finished, the thought so soft it was almost lost in the void. Because of only that, the paradox of us, the joke they could not understand, was strong enough to break them. It was a loop, Bren, a loop that could only be closed by this. He stared at her, and then another piece, his own piece, slammed into place. His hand went to the small of his back. The oath core. The thing he had called shrapnel. The core, he said, his own thoughts slow, thunderous. It wasn't from a war, was it? Morel shook her head, her smile knowing. No, she did not plant that. That was yours. He looked at his hands. Mine, who else? Bren, who else but you? A you from a future that needed to be guaranteed, a you who knew. One day, you would be standing on a dune, dying of thirst. A you who needed to make sure that the rounding error was in the right place, at the right time. A you who needed to preserve your own, stubborn, illogical human heart, safe. Inside a shell of forgotten code, he was two men, the man who had stumbled, and the man who had laid the stone. He was a loop, just as she was. They were two self-fulfilling prophecies, designed by their own future, desperate, loving hands. But it wasn't fate, he said, the words of fierce, sudden revelation. This loop, it didn't force us. We could have failed. I could have not drunk. I could have run. You, You could have killed me. You tried. I did, she admitted, her voice full of that old, remembered shame. In the Citadel, he went on, his thoughts racing. When Halvern was siphoning me, you could have taken it. You could have chosen you. That's what the loop depended on. Not that it was written, but that we would choose, that we would freely write it ourselves. Yes, she said, it is not a cage. My Bren. It is a testament. That free will, that choice, is so strong, it can echo back and set its own stage. We did not fall into a trap. We built a bridge, and then we had the courage to walk across it, all the way from the end, back to the beginning. He looked at her. This impossible, mortal, brilliant woman, his partner, his queen, his loop. He did not kiss her. It was too cold, too silent for that. He just reached out. He pulled her close. They stood together on the silent Mercury dune, two hearts beating as one. Thrum-thump, a tiny, warm, defiant rhythm against the cold, dead, silent world. They were the error, and they were the answer. After a long time, he let her go. He looked down at the sand. So, he sent, a spark of the old, roguish humor returning. The horn is gone. The magic is spent. What now? Morel looked around, her eyes scanning the dunes. Now, we pass it on. Pass what on the last of our 25 years? No, she said. The fire. She pointed. Half buried in the sand, not 10 feet away, was another object. It was not the same horn. It was a different one. A piece of dark, petrified wood, twisted by the desert winds into a hollowed-out spiral. A natural, empty vessel. He walked over and picked it up. It was light. Empty. We can't. Send it back, he said. No, she agreed. But we can. Leave it. For the next one. For the next thirsty soul. For the next rounding error. They walked together to the highest point of the dune. They did not say a prayer. They did not perform a ritual. They just dug with their gloved hands. In the silent, silver sand, they dug a hole. He placed the hollowed, wooden horn in it. Morel placed her hand on it. He placed his on top of hers. They stayed there for a moment, their shared pulse, a quiet vow. A promise. Not of immortality, not of power, a promise of choice. They covered it. They left it for the future. As they stood, the twin suns of Ilex 4 breached the horizon. The copper and violet light spilled over the world, and the Mercury desert. It did not glitter. It burned. It lit up like a sea of liquid, golden fire. It was, Bren thought, the most beautiful, silent, and hopeful thing he had ever seen. The dual pulse beat, soft and steady, in the new light, two hearts, one vow. He took her hand, and without a sound, they turned and walked back to the skiff, to fly away and begin the work of building their new world.